Michael Jordan, David Robinson, Peyton Manning, and John Elway. What do these four athletes have in common? Big foreheads? They're all legends of their sport who retired at the perfect time. They got the happy ending. They accomplished the ultimate goal of sports, hoisting the championship trophy, and immediately after hung up their jersey for good. Kinda. See, in sports and almost anything else in life, we yearn for the happy ending. We've all got a little bit of recency bias, so we want things to end well because we'll probably remember that moment better than some random moment in the middle. But it can't always happen like this. Unlike Parmesan cheese, fine wine, or a 7-Eleven cigar, things don't always get better with time like people like to claim. Look no further than athletes to prove this, who don't just not get better with time, they almost always do the opposite and get worse. Of course, athletes train hard to get better their whole lives, but eventually all those years of training catch up to them. Those knees, shoulders, whatever, don't work like they used to, meaning most athletes don't get this happy ending we dream of. It's the circle of life. One day you're good enough to start, you're making an impact, you're getting better, and the next you're not. The next generation of players has overtaken you. How do you think Solomon Hill's career ended? What about Will Barton, Quincy Acey? These guys didn't go out on their own terms. They weren't given a retirement tour around the league. They were good enough to contribute until shit, my only contract offers are from Raptors 905 and some random team in North Korea. I'm 33, I'm a millionaire, I'll just go home and never have to work a day in my life again. These guys are here until they're not. It just kind of happens. We probably won't get a Shams tweet when Daniel Gafford retires. But the stars are different. These guys rise to the top of their class. They become the faces of their craft. They build legacies that people will remember forever. With these players, we expect a happy ending. Nobody wants to see a star player become just another guy, even if it's inevitable in most cases. See, with Terrence Ross, it's fine, but if Steph Curry ever becomes a scrub, I'm gonna fucking lose it. We often romanticize the superstars who end their career on a happy note, like Kobe's 60-point game, for example. But these are no doubt selective memories. Trust me, we choose to forget a lot of superstars' retirements. For every Kobe Bryant dropping 60 points in his final ever game, there's a Tracy McGrady getting DNPs in the NBA Finals. For every D Wade or Dirk going on retirement tours with their original teams, there's a Blake Griffin wearing number 91 rotting on the Celtics bench. The sad reality is that many stars, as expected with age, go out sad, much like their less heralded counterparts. Let's start with Blake Griffin. While not on the same level as the guys I contrasted him to, Blake was a household name in the NBA for a while and came into the league with tons of hype. Drafted first overall in 2009, Griffin made his presence known immediately, coming out with unanimous Rookie of the Year honors and being still the most recent rookie to be selected to the All-Star team, albeit in a Ben Simmons, Chet Holmgren style rookie year where he missed the first year due to injury. In his second season, Blake would be teamed up with Chris Paul to form Lob City, an era of Clippers basketball where they actually looked to have a bright future. Blake and the Clippers got better and better, with 4 straight All-NBA appearances for Griffin and the Clippers becoming a playoff mainstay in a tough Western Conference. But they never quite reached the top. 2015 would be the last time the Lob City Clippers made it out of the first round, notoriously blowing a 3-1 lead to the Rockets. Injuries plagued his next 2 seasons, and Blake would end up on the Pistons, appearing to be fading away from his prime and the spotlight. But Blake Griffin had other ideas. He was finally the guy on his team for the first time since his rookie year, and seriously adapted his game to the modern NBA. He was blossoming further than just Chris Paul's lob buddy and into the #1 guy he was drafted to be, getting All-NBA honors for the first time since 2015. So how the hell did we get here? Blake brought the 2019 Pistons to the 8th seed with little help around him. Unfortunately, a meniscus injury kept him out of the lineup the first 2 games, and with the Pistons down 0-2, Blake would play through the meniscus injury alongside this lineup. I mean, what the hell? He won the hearts of every Detroit fan, but unfortunately, they still got swept, and Blake's career would never be the same. Chronic injuries meant he barely played for the next 2 years with the Pistons, and when he did, he was pretty horrible. He did join the then super team Brooklyn Nets, playing surprisingly well in a supporting role, and likely would have a ring if not for injuries to his teammates and/or Kevin Durant's freakishly large feet. But the Nets, like Blake, fell apart fast, and in 2023, Griffin would sign with the Celtics, a shell of himself, donning that number 91 and calling it quits after one season. Had he stayed one more season, he would have the ring that he so absolutely deserves, but at the end of the day, it was his decision to hang it up. He knew it was time, even if that time came far too soon and unexpectedly. Griffin might not have done much on the court for the Celtics, but he did pioneer what I like to call the Blake Griffin method of choosing a jersey number. Can't start a season without it. Come on, number 5, number 5, number 5, number 5, 261, fuck! These stories are hard to swallow. I'm starting to see why we don't talk about them very often, because it's not representative of who these players were before the injuries. Another star whose outcome was very similar to Griffin's is none other than John Wall. Now, because of all this, and simply because he deserves it, I'm gonna talk about John Wall in depth at some point, so for now I'll keep it short. Wall, like Griffin, was drafted first overall and came into the league with expectations of turning around a pretty rough team. Wall, like Griffin, made an immediate impact and within a few years was a regular on all-star teams and comfortable in that B or C tier of star players. This leads us to 2017, both his and the Wizards' most successful season from his arrival in Washington. Averaging 23 points and nearly 11 assists, career highs in both marks, Wall would lead the Wizards one win shy of 50, good enough for the 4 seed, and make his first All-NBA team. In the playoffs, Wall would build on this even further, averaging 27 and 10 and making huge plays for the Wizards before they'd unfortunately go out in 7 games in round 2. Unfortunately for Wall, this was the beginning of the end. In 2018, he would play just 42 games, and the Wizards would get bounced in round 1. 2019 was much worse though. The Wizards declined even more, starting well below 500, and in December, Wall would undergo season-ending surgery. But the real blow was when Wall tore his Achilles while recovering in his own home, which would put him out for another year. Wall's Supermax contract crippled the Wizards into purgatory while he watched from the sidelines, and right before his return in late 2020, the Wizards shipped him off to Houston for Russell Westbrook. Wall wasn't terrible with the Rockets, but he didn't fit the team's new rebuilding timeline, and after one season, he would sit out all of the next so Houston could develop their new young guards. He would return in 2023 with the Clippers, but after 34 games, he would be replaced by Russell Westbrook once again, marking the end of his NBA career. Wall has since opened up about his mental health struggles throughout all this, having lost his mother and grandmother amidst this brutal injury recovery. He has an excellent Players Tribune piece about this dark time, which I highly recommend you check out. This is the worst kind of exit for a star. Injuries slow you down before you anticipated, and you're left in a new home because your old one didn't want you anymore, trying to claw yourself back to that magic you used to have while clearly being a shell of yourself. Victor Oladipo and Gordon Hayward are 2 more recent players who suffered this fate in extremely similar fashion to one another. Both had unexpected all-star breakout seasons several years into their careers, and both sadly had career-altering injuries after these seasons, changing the trajectories of their careers forever, as both are already out of the league. These guys got taken from us too early, but at least we got to see them at what was probably around their peak form. What about when guys get taken from us before their prime, the guys far too young to get career-altering injuries? Brandon Roy came into the NBA and immediately became a star. Drafted 6th overall in 2006, Roy would win Rookie of the Year and rapidly ascended the ranks, making his first All-Star team in year 2 and first All-NBA selection in year 3. His Blazers quickly became a powerhouse, reaching 50 wins in both Roy's 3rd and 4th seasons, but in Roy's 5th year, he got horrible news. He was told that both of his knees lacked cartilage, significantly increasing the wear and tear put on them. In short, his knees were fucked. After a 2011 season that saw him in and out of the lineup, Roy would medically retire from basketball. A tough break for all the Blazers fans who had just seen 2 of their young stars, Roy and Greg Oden, retire due to really bad injury luck. Roy would return in 2013 with the Timberwolves after new technology allowed him to play again, but he would make it through just 5 games and clearly didn't have it in him. Although Roy's electric prime was cut far too short, he's still remembered fondly to this day, as are the other aforementioned stars. A more extreme version of Brandon Roy's career is the absolute roller coaster that Bill Walton went through. Walton's career is the definition of bittersweet. He, unlike many others who went out sad, did win a ring in his shortened career, in fact doing it twice, once as a star with the Blazers and once as a role player with the Celtics. But while he reached the highest highs, he may have had the lowest lows. Walton ascended to NBA immortality as fast as anyone can, winning his first ring and Finals MVP in just his third season, and winning his first league MVP in year 4. But signs of chronic injuries were there from the start, and unfortunately for Walton, this would be the best it would get. Over the next 4 seasons following his MVP, Walton would play just 14 games, all coming in the 1980 season, now with the Clippers. When he finally returned to semi-consistent play in 1983, he was good, but nowhere near the player he once was. However, Walton would reinvent himself as a supporting player. After his okay stint with the Clippers, Walton would find himself in Boston, where in 1986, he would play a career-high 80 games and play a key role off the bench, ultimately winning 6th Man of the Year. Walton would also win his second ring that year, and it seemed like he had found a role that was sustainable for his body. He could contribute in small spurts and potentially win more rings with a new Celtics dynasty. He would play 22 more games and retire. Following the ring, Walton would miss most of 87 and all of 88 with foot issues, and while he tried to come back in 89, he just didn't have it in him. The pain had gotten too much. Bill Walton's career was extremely sad because of how quickly he declined, but he did at least conquer the mountaintop twice, something many stars, including 2 Rockets legends, can't say. Ralph Sampson and Yao Ming each experienced very similar issues during their short but notable times playing with the Houston Rockets. First off, both of these guys were gigantic. Sampson was 7'4" and Yao was 7'6". Both were number 1 overall picks with incredibly high ceilings due to their massive height and unusually high skill to pair. Sampson is forgotten about today because of how short his peak was, but he was like Wemby before Wemby. At 7'4" with a 7'10" wingspan, Ralph dominated college basketball with a refined post game and unusually high mobility for his tall stature. Obviously he had a good inside game, but he also had a really solid jumper and would have been a stretch big had he played today. Sampson had great injury luck to start his NBA career, making 4 straight All-Star teams as a result. However, during that 4th season, Sampson would experience the first of many major injuries that would forever hamper him, playing just 43 games that season and taking a dip production-wise. In his 5th year, he was traded to Golden State, and by year 6, he was already a shell of himself, averaging just 6 points a game and becoming more of a bench player. Sampson would play just 3 more years with the Kings and Bullets before calling it a career at the young age of 31. See, even in the Bullets days, this is where stars went to die. Like Bill Walton, Ralph's prime ended in the blink of an eye, except he never reached the same peaks that Walton did before the injuries started. Ralph's storied college career and his dominant start in the NBA earned him a spot in the Hall of Fame, something that his fellow Rockets big man Yao Ming can thankfully say too. Yao came into Houston with the expectation of being their next cornerstone big following the Hakeem Olajuwon era. Unlike Ralph, Yao had plenty of meat on his bones. This big boy was 310 pounds, making him an absolute force in the paint, but also meaning he had a much greater injury risk. But like Ralph, Yao avoided injuries for the first 3 seasons of his career, missing just 2 games over that stretch. The injury luck got worse over the next 4 years, but Yao became elite, making 4 straight All-NBA teams from 2006 to 2009. But in the 2009 playoffs, Yao would suffer a hairline fracture in his foot. He didn't know it at the time, but this would change his career forever. Yao returned for the 2011 season, playing just 5 games and making his 8th and final All-Star team, thanks to his extremely loyal fan base in China. Yao's injuries were unfortunately not much of a surprise. He and Ralph Sampson were some of the first players of their massive size to become NBA stars. Their injury issues and unfortunate declines are why we looked at Victor Wembanyama with such caution coming into the NBA. It seems unfortunately that Joel Embiid is currently going through the same sharp decline as the big man stars before him. His career to this point sadly shows a lot of the same signs that Walton, Ralph, and Yao had, having missed plenty of time due to nagging foot and knee injuries. I really hope the doctors pull through though, man. I've always been a Jokic guy, but Embiid is mesmerizing to watch when he's at his best. 7-footers rarely possess this combination of size and skill. Injuries are unfortunately just part of the game for a lot of big men. It's something we've seen time and time again with not only the star big men who fell off suddenly, but also the guys who never reached stardom like Greg Oden because their bodies never let them. It's always bittersweet to imagine what these guys could have been if their bodies cooperated. But what about when legends go out sad? Somebody who dominated the league for their entire time in it and still left yearning for something more. Elgin Baylor is unequivocally a legend. He made first team All-NBA 10 times, averaged the most points in a season for somebody not named Wilt Chamberlain, and made the finals 8 times. The problem is he didn't win fucking any of them. 8 times, man. Many stars retire without a ring, but that's another level. Believe me, it does get worse though. After 12 seasons of being one of the game's best, Baylor suffered an Achilles tear in 1971 and abruptly retired in 1972. The Lakers finally won the championship in 1972. Baylor retired before the season ended, so he is not an NBA champion. Baylor played his entire 13-and-a-half-year career with the Lakers amidst a 17-year stretch where they didn't win a championship, the longest such streak in their franchise history. Had he played for the Lakers that long in any other era, he would have at least one ring. Now, I'm not here to argue whether or not Elgin Baylor was some playoff choker who didn't deserve the ring because he was unclutch. He could have been all that and more, but that's not what this is about. Making 8 finals in your Hall of Fame career and not winning one, with half of them losing in 7 games, that's just unlucky, man. And the ring coming right after he left is just some devil shit. Not only did Elgin Baylor have one of the most bittersweet primes in NBA history, he topped it off with probably the most untimely retirement ever. Pete Maravich also had a sad, sudden injury very akin to what Baylor experienced. Maravich is more known for his ridiculous college stats than his NBA career, but through 9 seasons in the pros, Maravich had amassed 5 All-Star appearances and even came 3rd in MVP voting one year. However, throughout all this, Pistol Pete had notoriously bad knees, and in his 10th year, this really caught up to him. His production dipped as he struggled to stay on the court, and by season's end, he was shipped off to Boston. Following this disappointing season, Pete would hang it up at the young age of 32. While his legacy lives on today, it's a shame Pete's playing days ended when they did. Pete was a long-range shooter long before the three-point line was even a thing. He only got to play 1 season with the three-point line, an addition that many say would have transformed him into an even greater threat. I mean, this dude shot 67% in his 1 season with the three-point line. Maybe it's a good thing he got injured because holy shit, this could have been game-breaking. Maravich would tragically die due to heart failure just 8 years after his NBA career ended. It truly is a shame how Pete was taken from us far too early, both as a player and as a person. He would have loved to see what basketball evolved into after his death, maybe save for Caitlin Clark beating his scoring record in college. May he rest in peace. Now, since these guys played a long time ago, their misfortunes are rarely talked about today, unlike the more modern examples I gave earlier. An older player who isn't forgotten about though is Penny Hardaway, whose career is thankfully celebrated today despite the injuries that derailed him really early on. Penny is remembered fondly thanks to the success he experienced early on with Shaq, but when his time in Orlando came to an end in '99, he can never replicate that same magic that he had before thanks to several knee and foot injuries. He would retire at 34 before coming back for another year at 36, only playing 16 games. An interesting observation about Penny's career is that his position on Basketball Reference gradually got bigger throughout his career, starting as a jumbo point guard in '94 and ending as an average-sized small forward in 2008. It's a shame Penny was taken from us so early, because if he kept up this pace, he'd be playing center by 2018, defensive tackle by 2033, and sumo wrestling by 2056. These injuries suck, man. Seeing the characters, personalities, and skill sets we come to know and love vanish due to factors out of their control is something no fan wants to see. Finally, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention those who passed away during their NBA careers. Reggie Lewis, Drazen Petrovic, Malik Sealy, and so many more, tragically taken from us far too early. Rest in peace. I need a break. Injuries are without a doubt the biggest cause of guys going out sad, and it's something that causes endless discussion in the sports community due to the what-ifs they create. These discussions are really hard to have. But thankfully for our sake, there are far more examples of guys going out sad. Enter Jack Molinas. One-time All-Star, 1-year NBA career. I already spoiled that we're done with all the sad injury stuff, so what gives? Bet on his own games and got permanently banned from the NBA after 34 games. Pretty sad way to go out, but honestly, I can't even blame the guy. He was just betting on himself, betting on his own team. A true hustler ahead of his time. He bet against his own team too. Do better, Jack. Now, if you're feeling sorry for him and saying this was some sort of honest mistake, I'd probably reconsider that. Apparently in 1961, this guy was outed as the ringleader of a nationwide college basketball betting scandal where he would bribe players and get them to throw games for money. This had serious impacts on Hall of Famers Roger Brown and Connie Hawkins, who were blackballed from the NBA, going undrafted for a few years because they took money from Molinas, even though they didn't even throw any games. The fact that these guys were blackballed for even associating with him shows the reputation Jack had built in the basketball community. It's official, we've got our first player today who I will argue in confidence deserved his demise. Shame on you, Jack. Weak-ass all-star team averaging 11.6 points a game on 49% true shot. A guy I won't dog on for his weird exit is none other than Terry Dischinger. See, if you look at his yearly points per game and ignore the hole in his basketball reference page, you'd see this guy had the rare rookie peak and pretty much got worse every year till his retirement. But what's in the hole? Military service? Well, salute to you, Mr. Dischinger. You may have averaged significantly less points after your service, but you can rest knowing true and well that you are an American hero. Still ain't no Ted Williams, though. That's why you're not frozen in a lab. Surprisingly, that's not where the lore ends with this guy. When this guy was in the trenches, he was having visions of becoming a dentist, and so after he retired from basketball, he just became a dentist. A cool quirk of the players of old who didn't make generational wealth like the players of today. So while his playing career looks like he went out sad, this guy was doing far more than just basketball. And unlike 99% of the niche 60s NBA players, you might actually know who this guy is, if you're really into giving your money away at least. Yeah, for some reason Terry Dischinger was like the best player in NBA 2K when they added him into the game. I am not kidding, there were deadass people playing hundreds of hours trying to get Terry the Dentist Dischinger out of a random pack. Because if they didn't have Terry the Dentist Dischinger, they would have a significantly worse chance to win $250,000 in the big tournament. Molinas takes, Terry gives. You're a legend, Mr. Dischinger. So there's injuries, gambling addicts, aspiring dentists, all NBA stars who cut their careers short for reasons in and out of their control. But how can a star go out sad without cutting their career short, playing as long as they can? A humiliation so bad that some of the game's best players leave the league still wanting to achieve more, still feeling unsatisfied. Ring chasing is the idea that players who are way past their prime join the best teams at the end of their careers to try and mooch off a championship. It's a tale as old as time. If you're past your prime and willing to play for cheap, why not join the 2017 Warriors instead of signing with some shitty rebuilding team? It just makes too much sense. And ring chasing is a thing outside of sports too, believe me. If I'm not married by 40, I'm going to start doing everything I can to try and get that ring, even if it gets me a loitering charge. So who are the NBA's most blatant ring chasers? Well, it's hard to determine who is just joining the best situation and who is, quote, ring chasing. I'm going to define it as specifically guys at the end of their careers trying to mooch off an established team's success. Of course, you can argue KD was chasing rings by joining the Warriors, but with that logic, basically anyone who's not joining the Hornets or the Kings is ring chasing. Wash dudes only. With this definition in mind, nobody fits the bill more than Celtics Shaq. Ah yes, good old overweight, 8 points a game scoring, number 36 wearing Shaq. The man's synonymous with the term washed in modern internet culture. Now what makes Celtics Shaq a ring chaser? Well, he literally said it, first of all. But even without that helpful quote, knowing Shaq's personality, it's pretty clear to see why he signed with the Celtics. They had made the finals 2 of the last 3 seasons, winning it in 2008, and the big three of Garnett, Allen, and Pierce was still kicking it. Shaq knew he would be in a supporting role, and after 35 games as the Celtics starting center, he would get injured and barely be able to play the rest of the season. Unfortunately, the original Big Three would lose to the new guys, that being LeBron and the Heatles, and Shaq would retire halfway through his 2-year contract with Boston. He knew that this wasn't a fitting way to go out, and regrets not having a proper retirement tour as he didn't know 2011 would be his last season. Shaq is probably the most notorious ring chaser in NBA history, given how dominant he was historically and his sharp fall off on the Celtics. But there are plenty more ring chasers who failed just as hard as Shaq. See, Shaq was an embarrassing ring chaser, but he had a ring. 4 of them, in fact. Many other ring chasers don't have a ring, which makes their ring chasing much more high stakes. Tracy McGrady's sad exit had a lot to do with injuries like the guys I mentioned before, but there was a heavy dose of ring chasing. T-Mac's fall from stardom was hard, mostly caused by injuries. From 2000 to 2008, McGrady averaged 26.3 points a game, the 4th most in the league over that span. He was one of the NBA's best, but following injuries on his shoulder and knee, McGrady fell hard after 2008, and further injuries led to the one superstar averaging 8 points a game in a few years. T-Mac would bounce around a few teams, none of them that good, until 2012, where he swallowed his pride and signed in China. He would put up prime T-Mac numbers for the CBA's shittiest team, but in April, T-Mac would perform what is perhaps the most shameless ring-chasing effort by a star ever, and signed with the San Antonio Spurs ahead of the 2013 playoffs. Because of how late he joined the team, T-Mac would barely play for the Spurs, and his ring-chasing efforts fell short as San Antonio would fall to Miami in a famous 7-game finals. McGrady's career is one of the biggest what-ifs ever. Despite his extremely high peaks, he never made it out of the first round during his prime, thanks to injuries, lack of help, and maybe his own shortcomings. Most ring-chasing superstars at least contribute something to their new team, even if they're a shell of their former self. T-Mac's complete lack of role with the Spurs almost makes it seem like the basketball gods were intervening, and that Ray Allen only hit that shot to spite T-Mac for not deserving a ring. Speaking of Ray Allen, he's one of the few examples of ring chasing actually working out well. Now, of course, it'd be disingenuous to imply that Ray Allen was just piggybacking off that Heat team. He did save LeBron's legacy after all. But saying that Ray leaving the already great Celtics to join the even better Heat wasn't some sort of ring chase is also ignorant. Thankfully for Ray, he morally earned that ring with that shot in Game 6. Gary Payton's another successful ring chaser, as he also piggybacked on a Heat title run, this time in 06. But as many people know, this is Gary Payton's second ring chasing effort, as he joined the Lakers in 2003 and fell short in the 04 finals. He had another fellow ring chaser on that Lakers team, that being Karl Malone, who wasn't so lucky for a second shot. Malone was very similar to Payton, as he was also a part of great Western Conference teams who couldn't quite compete with the MJ Bulls. However, Malone was 5 years older than Payton, joining the Lakers at 40, meaning this was even higher stakes than Payton's ring chasing efforts. If the Lakers, who were favored to win the title, failed, this was probably Malone's last shot. And failed they did. The Lakers famously lost in embarrassing fashion in the 04 finals, falling in 5 games to the underdog Detroit Pistons. Malone played horribly with a ring on the line, averaging just 5 points on 33% shooting. Although Malone didn't retire immediately following that season, he went unsigned for most of 2005 and decided to retire in February. The Spurs, who did win the championship that year, were supposedly interested in signing Malone mid-season if he decided to come back. He did not, and so Malone will forever be one of the league's best ringless superstars. This is another case where I think the basketball gods are stepping in to stop these guys. Many times when a notorious ringless superstar has tried to change that about himself, it's almost never gone well. T-Mac on the Spurs, his knees were very hurt, Heat in 7. LaMarcus and Blake on the Nets, this team was supposed to be the best, Bucks in 7. Bucks in 7. Melo and Russ, oh my, the Lakers thought these guys were in their prime. Lakers, just kidding, they didn't even make the fucking playoffs. Karl Malone, Pistons in 5. Yeah, I'm starting to think the basketball gods are right about these guys. Ring chasers are no fun. They game the system by joining established teams after they failed to get it done on their own, And as we've seen, the basketball gods almost never reward this type of tomfoolery. But we still remember these ring chasers well. They were on the biggest stages at the end of their careers, and even if they failed, they were still in the spotlight for being on the teams they were on. But you see, ring chasers aren't the only guys who leave their teams at the end of their careers. This happens way more than it should. It's how we end up with pictures that make us go, what the fuck are you wearing? Yeah, the final subcategory of guys who went out sad are the guys who could just end their career with one team, but just don't. It's a phenomenon that exists across all sports, and I can't for the life of me begin to understand it. Now I know, once players decline physically, teams are less likely to want them, meaning many teams give up their legends just because it's the best thing to do at that time. But unless they're so bad that they're literally not an NBA player anymore, just keep these guys around. Pat Riley's cheap ass let Dwayne Wade walk in 2016, and thank God he learned his lesson, because I do not want to remember Bulls or Cavs Dwayne Wade. D-Wade was setting up to be a prime example of this phenomenon, but thankfully he went back to Miami and had a nice little retirement tour. But it'd look a hell of a lot nicer if he just had one team. Like, why does this happen so much? Take Akeem Olajuwon for example. Rockets lifer, won 2 championships with the franchise, perfect candidate to finish his career with one team, right? Signs with the Raptors over a minor contract dispute and retires the next year. Just stay in Houston, bro. Or how about the face of this phenomenon? Tony Parker, franchise legend, key player on 4 championship teams, finals MVP, free agent after 17 straight years in San Antonio, signs with the Hornets because he wanted more playing time. It's not even like the Spurs had become bottom feeders either. Sure, they lost Kawhi, but they won 48 games and took the Nuggets to 7 in the first round. Tony Parker left a competitive playoff team so he could average 10-4 on the Hornets. He didn't even start. Dominique Wilkins is another legend who played for a bunch of random teams toward the end of his career. A Hawk for most of his time in the league, Dominique is definitely one of the best ringless superstars ever. After his time in Atlanta came to a close, Dominique would bounce around various NBA and European teams before ending his career in Orlando. This is the most obscure of his late career stints, and I can see why. He only averaged 5 points a game, and come on, it's Orlando. But he joined the Magic to play with his younger brother. That's cute and very understandable. So what are you guys in for? Yeah, the Magic also paid host to Patrick Ewing and Shawn Kemp during their wash seasons in 02 and 03 respectively. There's an argument that these were some sort of ring-chasing efforts. The Magic with T-Mac and Grant Hill could have been a legit team if those guys were healthy, but they weren't. The Magic weren't that good, and these guys are rarely associated with their time in Orlando. I'm pretty sure I learned these guys were on the Magic thanks to a 2K My Team promo where they made all the cards their washed-up versions. Honestly, a pretty creative idea, something we rarely see from 2K these days. Another guy they had in this pack was Allen Iverson on the Grizzlies, which would have been a really funky way to go out had he not pulled a D-Wade and returned to the Sixers in 2010. I hesitate to say that AI went out sad. His career was more sad as a whole as he didn't win a championship. He could have gotten cut short by injuries. He played his last game at 34, but he played overseas for a few seasons, which means his NBA exit was probably because he didn't want to come off the bench rather than injuries. These guys show us that most of the time, the storybook ending just isn't going to happen, and while it may sting in the moment, people oftentimes remember what you were, not the washed version of you who existed for 1 year. So why the f did you do this, buddy? Yeah, I almost forgot. Someone who many consider the greatest player of all time even did this shit. I made Jordan an example at the start because the second and even the first of his retirements were legit endings to a Disney movie. The first retirement was incredibly abrupt and not well received, but he had almost nothing left to prove even at his young age, winning 3 straight championships. The second retirement, though, after winning another 3 straight championships, cemented him as the GOAT, undisputedly. But he just had to have a third go. Now, obviously, Jordan's time in the Wizards doesn't take away from his legacy at all, but in a vacuum, you gotta admit this is pretty fucking weird. After 3 seasons of retirement, Jordan, now the owner of the Washington Wizards, came out of retirement to play for his own team. I don't know why Jordan kept getting involved with these random teams. What, did he think it was a sick joke to have his name associated with the Wizards and the Charlotte Bobcats? Yeah, probably. Now, many people know that Jordan's time with the Wizards couldn't even qualify as going out sad. He was still a pretty good player for the Wizards, making the All-Star team in both of his years in DC. Jordan went out sad not because his stint in Washington was some sort of embarrassment, just that he sold away the greatest storybook ending of all time. And let me be clear again, it's not like his wizard stint takes away from anything he did with the Bulls, but this is the way he technically left basketball forever, so I'm not going to hold back on him. Michael, why would you do this to yourself? And that's about it for the stars that went out sad. Well, it may be hard to... The fuck? Hold on, I gotta check this out.
Yeah.
The fuck is going on here? What are you doing?
I don't know.
Since when do you play piano? Of course, how could I forget the notorious Kevin Garnett Nets era? This highlight reel of KG in Brooklyn may have replaced Celtics Shaq as the washed meme, but honestly, KG's stint on the Nets doesn't really warrant this treatment. And before I explain myself, let me get one thing straight. I get why this video is viral. It's fucking hilarious. I got something to say about damn near every scene in this video. Like, why is the first in-game highlight just a loose ball? This one's just pure nightmare fuel. This shot of KG looks like it belongs on one of those European cigarette boxes with all the warnings on it. Throw KG next to a picture of a headless baby. Yeah, that'll do the trick. Jesus, Kevin, stop getting into fights. This shit looked like it hurt. I like this moment after where he realizes the intrusive thoughts won the battle. Here's him trying to look tough, segued immediately into probably the most unattractive, low-quality shot they could have gotten. Next, they zoom in on his number 2 here, probably because he had a fetish with taking them. Just take a 3, Kevin, you're right there. And another fight for good measure. Besides all these memes, though, KG's stint with the Nets was more so disappointing than it was bad. Unlike a lot of guys in this category, the Nets had real expectations when they added KG. Now, this wasn't a ring chase, as the Nets traded for KG alongside Paul Pierce and Jason Terry to try and build a contender. We don't talk about what the Celtics got in return. Obviously, this is an infamously bad move by the Nets now, but at the time, people thought they just built a super team. Even Bill Simmons, the Celtics fan in NBA media, hated the trade at the time. He thought Boston got fleeced.
I thought this was 35 cents on the dollar. There's no guarantee that any of those picks will get in the lottery.
KG was still expected to be a star. What did we get? I've seen worse. Like I said, this was more sad because of the expectations he had with the Nets coming in, not because he was a scrub. It was a sharp fall off, but not an embarrassing one. Honestly, very similar to what Paul George experienced in 2025, where again, he wasn't necessarily bad, but when you compare it to the previous season and their expectations, yeah, it's pretty rough. Also, for the record, KG didn't even go out sad. He pulled a D Wade and ended up on the Timberwolves to finish his career. Was he good? No, but you get bonus points for ending where you started. So if he didn't go out sad, why is he included in the video? Do I need to answer that? And that was the stars that went out sad. Honestly, this list was way longer than I thought it was going to be, which just reaffirms what I said earlier. Good things are bound to come to an end, and many times that ending won't be how you envision it. And that's why, even if we clown on Celtics Shaq or Nets Kevin Garnett for being washed, we shouldn't let these times define them. We should remember the awesome careers they had instead. Everyone's bound to be washed up eventually. Just look at Instagram after a high school graduation. You have half the senior class putting #washed in their Instagram caption as if graduating high school is the pinnacle of their life's accomplishments. The stars of the league today will fade away eventually. Even if it seems like LeBron, KD, and Steph are gonna play forever, they'll have their washed up moments, like everyone who came before them. Honestly, I can't wait till 42-year-old KD is a supporting player on the Magic putting up 15 points a game. It's just a role I want to see him in. And now that I've successfully explained and justified the league's greatest stars becoming washed shells of themselves, one thing better be certain. I don't want to see anyone laughing in 25 years if I go ring chasing. If Shaq did it, I'm doing it too.
So, you're getting divorced, huh?